The CIA has been operating to induce inflation and other market problems into Cuba's economy. That, according to a report this week in the Cuban newspaper Granma, under a headline, U.S. intelligence services operate against Cuba's finances. According to the article, the aims of the most recent onslaught by the CIA and its associated agencies was to attack the currency, generate hyperinflation, and contract production, altering the distribution of goods and diverting them to overpriced black markets, attacking the economic actions of the government. It describes a four-part strategy. For more on that, we go to Nicaragua to speak with journalist Camila Escalante, who has just returned there from a visit to Cuba. So, Camila, you've read this story and you just came back. What do you think?
This article is really interesting because it talks about the way in which U.S. intelligence continues to find ways to meddle in the Cuban economy using things like this platform. This Granma article names this platform called El Toque that's used to stimulate inflation. El Toque is this account on Telegram, essentially, and behind it are unknown individuals. This is exactly what happened in the case of Venezuela just some years ago. In that case, it was a Twitter account that every single day was coming out and announcing what the exchange rate was. And it wasn't, the official exchange rate being announced by a central bank or any authority or anything like that, but these mysterious people who say that they have some sort of method to put together all these different numbers based on some equation of all these different factors of people buying dollars on the market and exchanging and all that, and they come out with the real rate, which there's a discrepancy between this supposed real rate of exchange between the Cuban peso and the US dollar and what the official rate is. And so this is something that Cuba now is saying that the United States is behind. And they say that the main objective of the CIA and its maneuvers is to manipulate the prices of products and, subvert order in this country.
Camille, I saw something like this 30-something years ago towards the end of the Soviet Union's life. And it was a process that took a number of years, apparently, beginning in the period known as détente, when tensions were actually lower and some commercial relations began to grow between the West and the Soviet bloc. They were kind of used as a period to introduce the Soviet markets to Western products and to instill, like we have here, whether officially or not, secondary currency to the Soviet ruble, where people used dollars or pounds or marks or, whatever, instead of using rubles for some products. And they even had a separate retail network set up, stores that were called Berioska stores, where you could buy Western goods, but you needed a Western currency. This caused people to steal stuff from work that they could sell on the black market in exchange for Western currencies. Like the guy who drives the tomatoes from farm to market, half of them would fall off the truck on the way, and now he had money to go buy stuff in the Berioska store that he would then flip to somebody for rubles in the black market. And the economy kind of fell out through its rear end as a consequence of this, literally. That was kind of why all the stores ended up empty and the economy kind of fell apart. I haven't been to Cuba since 2019, and people seem to be, hanging in there pretty well, considering there was a 60-year economic war going on against them. What's it like now? You just came back.
Well, the situation is much like it has been in recent years, but as the government has denounced on many occasions internationally, taking to the podium at the UN and in many other instances, things have gotten a lot harder since COVID-19. But it's not just because of COVID-19 and the lockdown and the shutdown of the tourism industry, but it's because new measures were imposed against Cuba by the Trump administration that have not been lifted by the Biden administration since. And also, Cuba was returned to the list of state sponsors of terrorism, which makes it very difficult to do trade with other countries. So the situation has really, really become quite difficult. Some numbers were released in the last week regarding the number of tourists, I believe, who've entered the country in recent months. Definitely it has bounced back, and they hope to see more of that. And it's so absolutely vital that tourism industry for bringing money into the country. But unfortunately, beyond those positive signs, like you said, it's really difficult with inflation due to, for various reasons related to the blockade and sanctions on Cuba, the difficulty in getting fuel. There have been fuel shortages in Cuba in recent years, and that has contributed to inflation. This is the country that relies on its close allies, Russia and Venezuela, in order to import fuel. And, specific to the Cuban case, we know that there are 36 countries that are subject to unilateral coercive measures, but Cuba is an island. And so in these countries, under the worst of economic conditions and sanctions, where it's very difficult to import specific goods and necessary products, a lot of times in other cases, in other countries, people have been able to still get those products very cheaply because of contraband moving over borders, which simply isn't possible in the case of Cuba because of its location.
So the first sanctions by the U.S. were imposed in October of 1960. In 2015, there was a study that was published in Al Jazeera that estimated the total embargo cost up to that time, that's now 8 years or 9 years ago, at about $1.2 trillion. $1.2 trillion. Now, Cuba has a population of about 12 million, which means each and every man, woman, and child has already been, in Cuba right now, has already suffered a $100,000 loss.
It's absolutely, by definition, a genocidal blockade. Its aim is to starve the Cuban people. The Cuban people and their government have been able to, by and large, eradicate extreme poverty and homelessness. And they've also been able to reach a very high level of education, which is free up till university and beyond. Post-grad sort of, medical school and all of that, as well as, of course, they're bringing in people from other countries to teach. But at the same time, we're seeing a huge gap, although people are housed and they're able to, purchase some very basic food products. We're moving towards a new era of technology, of AI, of all sorts of other things that simply is not reaching the island. It's very difficult. Cuba, just like the rest of Central America, where I am, these countries have relied for many years, decades, largely their economies are relying on remittances from the exterior. Their family members go to live in different countries and they're able to send money, which amounts to just a massive chunk of the economy annually. And right now, the Cuban people, it's very difficult for them to, in any regular way, receive remittances. Western Union was shut down. Now they're able to use Western Union once again, but only between the United States and Cuba. You're not able to use it from other countries. It's basically the main service that people use anywhere in the world to be able to send money internationally. And so there are a lot of, services that are being denied beyond just the products. They want to starve the people into to submission so that they'll renounce their own model. And so far, they've yet to do that. But unfortunately, it's up to the people of the United States who've done little in the face of these really what are atrocities and human rights violations on a massive scale now for decades.
Camila, thanks again for your time, and I hope to speak with you again next week.
Thank you so much, Don.
For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.